Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We're talking starts and sits for Week 18. We know a lot of you are still have your hopes alive for your fantasy championship, and so we'll give you the players you need that should be in your lineup. We'll start with the start of the week. And Trevor Lawrence, look, it's tough to find guys in Week 18. You want to make sure players that are going to be out there for the full allotment of snaps, and this is as big a game as you will find. The Jaguars and Titans competing for the AFC South. Winner gets in. Jaguars still have some playoff hopes if they lose, but let's not worry about that. Let's talk about what Trevor Lawrence should be able to do. He was amazing against the Titans in Week 14 when he faced them. 38 fantasy points, 30 of 42 passing, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. We know this team has been terrible. 8 quarterbacks have scored at least 22 fantasy points against them. They give up the most passing yards per game on the season, and Lawrence should absolutely dominate this game because he's been on fire. Throughout the last 2 weeks against the rain and wind game against the Jets, we only played a half. Against the Texans last week, the 5 games prior to that, he was on fire. 3 of those games over 30 fantasy points, and he should have another dominant game this week. Heath, only 9?
Only 9. I just think it'll be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to this game because Mike Vrabel, like we've seen him for the past 3 years do more with less than we expected him to do. Now he's got a week and a half to prepare for this second game against a divisional opponent. It'll be interesting to see what their defense comes up with and what Doug Peterson comes up with on the other side.
I'm interested to see how well the Jaguars run the ball. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do such a good job of that. We know how strong that D line is for Jacksonville, and this is also a very competitive game where that left tackle missing for Jacksonville, Cam Robinson being out. I'm curious to see how that holds up and how the Titans attack that, but I'm still starting Trevor Lawrence, must-start fantasy quarterback, because he's a quarterback who should play 4 quarters. He's got something to play for, and he's got huge upside. It doesn't take much to be a top quarterback this week in fantasy.
And great weapons, too. We'll see if all 3 of their top guys, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and Zay Jones, all show up. Other starts for me include Geno Smith. Surprised me last week, 20 fantasy points against the Jets. Didn't think he would play that well, but should do well against the Rams. He beat them up the previous time that he faced them. Zach Moss and Tyler Algier. I'm a little probably too overexcited about Zach Moss. Algier was good last week as the start of the week, 16 PPR points. I think he'll do well once again. And then Chris Olave. So let's talk about Moss here, and Zay Jones as well. Let's talk about Moss here because it's the best matchup on the table just in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. Again, I think I'm a little crazy as you see, 17th for me. You guys have him outside of the starting range. But he's averaged over 5 yards per carry. I think he's going to have another game where he's going to lead the team in touches. And 7 running backs in the last 6 games, at least 12 PPR points. I think that's a floor for him. I think he's going to score for his first time this season. Not involved in the passing game, but I'm excited about him. Same thing with Algier. I think we're going to see the Bucs start to rest some guys in that game next week, whether they start or they just start to pull guys back. And we've seen this Falcons offense just be very successful. We talk a lot about what happens at the end of the season. Guys are looking for numbers. He is 100 yards away from a 1,000-yard season. I'm going to guess the Falcons do everything they can to get him to that number. So he should lead them in carries once again, hopefully score. And then Chris Olave, we talked about this on yesterday's show when it comes to waiver wire options, that Rashid Shaheed's in a good spot. I think Chris Olave is still the better of the 2. I think he's going to have a big game as they maybe try to make a late push to get him Rookie of the Year. This matchup is absolutely dreamy. 13 wide receivers in the last, I think it's 6 games against this Panthers defense have just been absolutely outstanding, including last week when Mike Evans tore them apart, along with Chris Godwin. So I think both Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed borderline starters in the majority of leagues. Heath, the starts for you for Week 18, Trevor Lawrence as well, Naji Harris, Cam Akers, Greg Dortch, and Taysom Hill. I know you've kind of been the anti-Naji guy for basically the better part of the last month. I've kind of been with you. It's made us look a little silly the last few weeks. 14-plus PPR points in 3 straight games. How's he going to do against Brown?
Everything really changed in Week 15. He's had at least 22 touches now in 3 straight games. And we've seen the work in the passing game come back the last 2 weeks, 12 targets in the last 2 weeks. And this Browns defense, it's not as bad as the Texans are against running backs, but not very good at all. Harris is one of those guys playing for something, will play the entire game with a bunch of volume against a great matchup, makes him a top 12 running back this week.
How's he looking next year?
I'm still a little bit concerned. They need to make, there's a lot of guys, we talked about this with Jonathan Taylor. I'm ranking him number 2 on the idea that the Colts are going to make a lot of improvements. The Steelers need to make a lot of improvements to that offensive line and to the offense in general. Wouldn't be surprised if they had a new offense next year.
I'd rank him top 10. He's still a young running back. We know he can catch the ball. I don't even know who the play caller is going to be on offense next year. They might make a change there. And that offensive line has to get addressed.
That's not something that they typically do, especially if they make the playoffs.
We'll see what happens. And if they keep Canada, then maybe there's a chance that they just change it a little bit. Because I think that it was a real wonky until recently when he started to get a little bit more targets like Heath talked about. And he's a good, talented running back. I'd like to see him get a good offensive line and for the passing game to be be a little bit better.
See,
as well.
That's the thing that concerns me because we saw that stretch of games where they just weren't throwing the ball. Last year, that's all they did was throw the ball. It's more about Ben Roethlisberger. Mm-hmm. Will Kenny Pickett make that a priority. He has the last 2 weeks, like you said, 12 targets. Most of it slanted 2 weeks ago
Raiders,
because
yeah.
last week's a little bit not as much. But will that be as much of a priority? I'm with you. I think he's still got the upside to be a top 10 guy. Probably going to be, we were talking about him maybe falling to the 4th or 5th round after
No
the
chance.
way things were going
Third,
for him. He's not
third or
going to the
fourth.
1st round pick.
Yeah.
I would
I
say
don't think
2nd or
so
3rd
either.
round pick is
Yep.
where he's going to go. You didn't get a chance to talk about Taysom Hill, so tell us your outlook for him this week against the Panthers.
6 weeks ago, he played 40% of the snaps for the first time this season. He's played more than 40% of the snaps every game since then. He's just become a big part of their offense, whether it's in the running game, it's in the passing game, he's catching a short touchdown pass. There's not enough tight ends that are reliable on a week-to-week basis or have his type of upside. And I think he's definitely a must-start top 5 tight end in non-PPR, and full PPR is more of a top 12 guy.
All right, so we'll see if he can come through one more time. Again, it's been very positive. Dave, you're just not feeling it.
No, this is old. I'm definitely ranking him higher than
Okay.
this.
Let's move on to your starts, Dave, and the 5 guys that you're looking at here. They're all from the same game. So you got Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon, and Christian Watson from the Packers, and DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams from the Lions here. So you're all in on this game. The one that's really probably stands out the most is Rodgers, because he hasn't been a good fantasy quarterback despite the fact that he's had some great matchups. And he was bad against the Lions the first time he took them on earlier this season. So is he going to connect with Christian Watson? Both those guys are going to come through with a big performance.
I think they will, and we know that Christian Watson, kind of the key to this passing game, and that when he started to play a little bit well, Rodgers' numbers ticked up a little bit. I'm not ranking him as a top 5 quarterback by any stretch, but I think he's startable, and I think he can get you north of 20 fantasy points. You see the projected fantasy points at 24.5. I think that's possible. I really do, because you look at that Lions run defense. I think they're back after what we saw last week. I think they're going to make it challenging on the Packers to run the football. I think Dillon can still score on them, but I think Aaron Rodgers, prime time, playoff on the line, it's going to be vintage Aaron Rodgers. He's going to throw 3 touchdowns. So that 24 number could be really good.
I've got Aaron Rodgers in my top 12 quarterbacks right now, and I just hate it.
It's first time for a long time.
Yeah, and and it's partially because, and I've said this with a lot of different guys, like he's going to play the entire game and he's playing for something.
Right.
So that is worth a lot. But playing an entire game has been about 3/4 worth of passing yards for Aaron Rodgers this season. The passing yards have been absolutely awful. He does not have multiple touchdowns in a game since week 12. It's just been a disaster. The only reason he's in my top 12 is because he's going to play the whole game. I kind of want to rank Brock Purdy ahead of him.
He's going to probably play a full game as well. Dave, the other side of this with the 2 running backs, you can start both of them this week against Green Bay?
This run defense for Green Bay just hasn't been great since they lost Rashawn
Last
Gary.
month, though, it's been much better.
It's been about 5 yards per carry allowed to running backs in their last 6 games. That includes a lot of the last month. And the Lions do have a good offensive line, and they do have a good run game. I expect them both to continue to get work.
All right, so we'll see if they come through. It's worth buying into, certainly as long as Justin Jackson stays away, because last week was amazing for both those guys. Again, much easier matchup, but we'll see if they're able to take advantage of what the Packers' run defense may or may not look like in this game Sunday night. And again, how important it will be to the Lions if Seattle does win and they are eliminated.